Hello, YouTube. Welcome to the Q&A session with the Hollywood actor who played Brian Shute in Vision Quest, Frank Jasper. My name is Zack Greenberg, and I'm here with my friend and former wrestling teammate, Netanel Arussy.
That's me. Frank, we are so excited to have you and are huge fans of yours. Let me just get the ball rolling with a quick background question. Can you just tell us a bit about your background and where you're originally from?
I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, Idaho, Washington, Oregon, but primarily Idaho. Graduated from Coeur d'Alene High School, wrestled there for 3 years. Then I went to North Idaho College on a tennis scholarship. Took a break from that altogether and became an iron worker for 4 years. And then ended up at Eastern Washington University in the athletic training program. So I was an athletic trainer for the sports teams. And I just happened to be on working with the wrestling team at the time that I ended up getting cast in Vision Quest. Just prior to going to Eastern Washington, I got to wrestle with a college team there in Pasco because one of my little brother, who's 2 years younger than me, one of his schoolmates actually was on a scholarship there and didn't have anybody to wrestle with at his weight, which was a 192. And I was bodybuilding at the time. And I graduated high school at 155 pounds. So Jaspers have a tendency to be late bloomers. So we really don't, hit our max until like deep into the college or even after college. So bodybuilding, I got up to 192 and then went to Eastern Washington, where I went to 3 days on, 1 day off of bodybuilding, along with my pre-med education. And plus I had to spend hours every day in the athletic training room. So I did nothing but study, eat, train, sleep for 3 years. And that's when I got cast in Vision Quest. So that's that piece to kind of get you to when I got cast in the Vision Quest.
Wow. So it sounds like you didn't have any real prior acting background experience up until then. Can you share with us what even got you to try out for the role and what your feelings were while you were trying out?
Wow, that was really kind of just a 1 in a million chance to get even, connected to this movie. I just was the athletic trainer for the wrestling team at the specific time. One of the guys was in the movie, already cast in as an extra. The guy's name is Rick Default. And so he came in, he was a wrestler for Eastern Washington, but he took this semester off because they were paying him to wrestle and he was in this movie. And so he was all excited about it. And so he came in, I was reading my textbook and he kind of started talking about this film that he was in. And then he goes, you know what? They're still looking for somebody 6 foot tall, muscular build that can wrestle. He goes, that's you, and I'm like, no. He goes, no, please just call the casting director. She's really nice. And so he kind of convinced me because I thought, okay, listen, I'm paying for my education. I was working as a bouncer at a place called the Slab Inn, on the weekends to kind of help pay, my part of my schooling. And I thought, heck, this is going to be a heck of a lot easier if I can be an extra in a movie, see how a movie gets made, pay for part of my education. That was my concept. But I went in for the audition. He finally convinced me. And so I thought, okay, I'm just going to go and see what this is about. I show up, the casting director then hands me sides. Now, Rick didn't even tell me that I had lines. I thought I was just going to be this wrestler in the background.
Oh my God.
So I had no idea what I'm getting myself into. It was probably a good thing. I probably would have been overwhelmed by the whole concept. So she hands me sides, which are dialogue for the movie and for the scenes. And so she goes, okay, I want you to read these with me. And so I'm reading those with her. I made a mistake and I kind of was nervous and I kind of did a nervous laugh and she stopped and she looked me in the eye and she says, we're looking for intensity here. If you make a mistake, just continue on as if nothing happened. Got it?
No.
Okay, you got it, man. So we read a couple more times. She goes, okay. She calls the director up and she says he wants to see you. And so we were in the hotel where they actually filmed part of the Vision Quest movie, right? So that's where they had their offices. Walk around the hallway over to the director, Harold Becker.
Is that where Loud was like waitering at the hotel?
That's the hotel where he was the waiter. Anyway, so we walk over to Harold Becker's office. We walk in and he looks at me and he goes, okay. And he takes the sides out of my hand and he says, okay, you know the lines now. And I was like, okay. And so I don't know how I got through it, just got through it. And then he says, okay, let's see if you can wrestle. And so he sent me out to Cash Stone, which was the coach that was running all the wrestling practices and making sure everybody could wrestle properly. And he had to see me wrestle. And so I wrestled and he said, okay, you did good. So he gave me the thumbs up. And then I had a couple more auditions. I had to shave my mustache off because I was wearing one of those 70s mustaches in the 80s still. And so, but I was the same age as Matthew, who was 26. But I had a really, we both had kind of young looks for our age. So once I shaved the mustache off, we looked really close. And then they told me, okay, we've got one more big audition to do. And what that's going to entail is that the producers are bringing this guy from LA and they like him. The director likes you. So you're going to have to read for the producers to convince them that you're the guy. And they're going to try and convince the director that the guy they brought down is the guy. And so I show up and I walk over to Harold's office with the casting director, the local casting director. And by the way, this role had been cast twice before. Neither one of those guys worked out. They were 2.5 weeks away from starting the film. So it's kind of crunch time. They had to make this decision and rock and roll. So I show up, we go over to Harold's office and he comes out of his office and he goes, okay, when you come in here, I want you to be intense the whole time. Got it? And he goes, smack. And he hits me, just like before, like a wrestling match in your coach, right? He goes, I just grit my teeth and I go, yeah, got it. He goes, that's what I want. So we waited a couple minutes and I walked in there. I do the audition and I'm reading with the casting director from LA and she's looking at me. She's up in front, so they can't see what she's doing. And I'm doing the lines with her and she's making these faces like, oh my God, this guy is terrible. I can't believe this. And I get done with the scene. I walk out and I said to my casting director, I said, like, what's up? I said, did I look ridiculous? Was I just not that good? She goes, what? No, why? You did great. I said, well, every time I read a line with her, she just kind of looked at me like I was doing something ridiculous. She goes, oh no. She cast this role twice before. Neither one of those guys worked out. She's brought another guy down that she wants to get cast in this role. And so she was trying to throw you off. I was like, wow.
Wow.
This is the kind of stuff you deal with.
Additive.
In these auditions. So we both read for the directors and the producers, which was John Peters and Peter Goober were the producers. Harold Becker was the director. And then they said, okay, we still need to make sure that this kid can wrestle. And his name is Frank Zagarino. He was about 6'1", 6'2". He had a very lean, ripped build, and he was a good wrestler. So we went over to where they were shooting a scene, and they pulled the whole crew off of that, and they had a mat there. And they had the mat was all really nicely lit. And so all the crew kind of gathered around the mat, and the guy that signs him off, Coach Cash Stone, was there doing part of a scene. And so he said, okay, and both of us got out on the mat. We had our wrestling gear on. And he says, okay, duck under, single leg, duck under this, arm drag, double leg blast, let's do that. And so he went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then he says, okay, this kid can wrestle. It's from Los Angeles. So he said he signed him off on that. Then we waited for about 5-10 minutes, and then John Peters came up and goes, okay, you got the role. So that was like, and I still had no idea what I was getting myself into, period. I just thought I was still like, oh, it's a character, has a few lines,
Yeah, go make some extra cash on the side, during college.
Yeah. Hope the movie turns out well. And so we had 2.5 weeks. Now I was bodybuilding. Now, remember, I told you I was bodybuilding. I was 192. And then for 3 years, I was training. I went from 192 to 215.
Wow.
So I'm sitting there at 215 pounds.
And you were supposed to be a lot smaller.
I was supposed to be 168. Thank you very much.
Yeah, they focus a lot on the 168 while you're not looking fully 168 in that.
And listen, I hope nobody has to run into somebody that has that kind of physique in high school. You just don't see that very often. I dropped 25 pounds in 2.5 weeks. I was at 4% body fat because we did a submersion test, a water dunk test in the Human Performance Lab at Eastern Washington. I was at 4% body fat. And I tell you, I probably will never be at 4% body fat again. As you know, it's not healthy. You need to be at least 7%
body fat.
Right. But it just shredded me for this movie. And, it got me down. So I was a lot closer to where Matthew was. And Matthew was doing just the opposite. He was taking vitamins. He was working out. He was eating protein. He was doing everything.
He's an actor. He has to bulk up to try to, at least meet the bodybuilder.
So it was just ironic that I was doing everything that his character in the movie was doing. I was having all those issues with dizziness and pain on my arm. I was in so much pain. My deltoids were just aching because they were catabolizing, because I just went down to just starving myself, which I don't recommend. I'm not about cutting weight. I don't believe in it. I think it's the stupidest thing to do as a wrestler. I'm spending hours and hours now doing podcasts on nutrition and trying to teach the wrestlers that if you're going to drop weight, there's a healthy way to do it. Starving yourself, dehydrating yourself, overtraining. It's counterintuitive to the whole concept of being ready for a match, a tournament. Depleted doesn't work.
I mean, that sweatsuit alone that he was wearing throughout the movie, that thing is scary. I've seen sweaters and such, but people who wear garbage bags are really worn out.
Yeah. So it's just not the smart thing to do.
Was it crazy luck that if the movie was being shot in a different state or a different town, would you have even been considered for the role?
I don't know how they would have found me. It was just such a interesting coincidence. It was just serendipity that he walked in that day and was sitting there and he just was talking about this role and said, hey, you really got to try this out, check it out. And 1 in a million. And then the fact that after 5-6 auditions I end up getting the role, and without, like you said, any acting background. So I was very lucky, and it put me on a trajectory. It put me on my own personal vision quest. Because
the parallels we see throughout your actual life in the movie are quite funny. I mean, the cutting weight, the pre-med, we have so much there.
And I did that actually 3 times for this movie, because I had made a commitment to the movie. I'm going to be in the best possible shape. I want to be the most intense antagonist that somebody could have in a movie that they have to overcome. That was my goal. It's I want to make this movie the best I can. So I cut that weight, and it was a hard cut, and I held it for 10 weeks. And then I went back to school and went back to bodybuilding. And then I got a call 3 months later. Oh, we got one more scene to do, because they looked at the film and they said, oh, we still needed a couple more pieces to add on. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I was at 217 when they called me this time, 3 months later. Because it takes a while for you to regenerate the tissue, build the muscle back up. I get a call 3 months later. I was like, okay, you need to drop that weight again. We shoot one more scene. I said, okay. But I had a month. So then I had a month to go from 217 to 189, which I did. Flew to LA, shot the extra piece. That one was the weigh-in scene. So that's where they apparently they didn't get what they wanted previously. So this is the weigh-in scene where Matthew shows up late.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I go back to school, and I'm 3 months later, and now I've got back into bodybuilding. I'm up to 225 now. I'm getting ready for a bodybuilding contest in another month or 2. I get a call. Oh, we got one more scene. I'm like, oh man. I said, listen, guys, I'm at 225. I can only go down to 200 pounds this time. I didn't want to cut any more than that. And so they agreed to that. And that's the scene where I approach him in the bathroom. You're a bleeder, and I'm wearing a jean jacket. And so it kind of covered it up at least, so you don't really notice the size difference. But if you look really close, you'll notice he looks a little bigger in that scene.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be rewatching a lot of these scenes, looking for the nitty-gritty differences.
Yeah, so I ended up dropping weight 3 times, and then I just kept going back to school. And then when the movie finally came out, it was actually almost an entire year later. It came out February 15th, 1985. And that's when I got called by an agency and said, hey, we saw the premiere in New York. We really like your work. We'd like to represent you. So I flew to LA. My brother was living here in LA at the time. And he went with me, and I went to a few interviews with different agencies, ended up signing with a different agency that I liked. And I went back to school, tied everything up, put everything I owned into my 280ZX. That's all I had. 280ZX. I completely filled it, drove it to LA. And for 3 years, I was in the acting business. I did another movie, a TV show, a national commercial. I was working up at Universal Studios. I was playing a double swordsman in the Conan live action show that they were doing at Universal for 2.5 years. And I just fried. I got burnt out. My body just couldn't handle. I wasn't taking good care of myself. I was drinking too much coffee, not getting enough sleep. And my acting classes were from like 6 p.m. to midnight or 1 o'clock, Monday through Friday. And then I'd get up, I would leave there and I'd go to UPS and work as a sorter until 8 o'clock in the morning. And then I'd sleep a couple hours and then get up and go do auditions and then go to my class. And so I wasn't getting enough nutrition or sleep or taking good care of myself. And so I just finally, my body was breaking down. I said, oh, I got to get back to taking care of myself. And in doing that, I also got interested in acupuncture. So I went back to school, got a master's degree in Oriental medicine. And my wife and I,
a different one.
Pardon me?
The same school or a different one?
No, this was not Eastern Washington. This was a school there in Los Angeles called Yosan University of Oriental Medicine. And it's run by a 38 generation family from China. So they've had 38 generation healers. And it was a really great school and a great education. It took 5 years to get that master's degree, even with all the other accreditation I had already in the 3 years at Eastern Washington. And then my wife and I did a practice for the last 25 years for health, fitness, and longevity. And so we just recently closed that last year, and we moved to Carmel. And now I primarily just do phone sessions and nutritional consultations on the phone because of COVID and all the challenges we've had. And I've been doing a nutritional podcast once a week to try and, the whole goal is to educate the wrestling community, the coaches, the wrestlers, the parents, because the parents got to be on board. They have to understand what's going on with their kid. And if I can leave anything with the wrestling community, it's going to be, cutting's not cool. And there's a way to take care of yourself. There's a way to maintain muscle and lose fat and stay healthy and not have to dehydrate. And there is a way to do that. And I want everybody to know what they can do to make that happen.
That's a fantastic message, really. I have a question here, and it's a very fascinating rumor that's been going around. Supposedly, in the first scene that you show up in, the log is very much real, and that's what we've heard at least. Can you expand on that? Because we heard no one else was able to lift it. It was kind of like an Excalibur situation. You come up and you just pull it out of the rock.
Man, I don't know if I want to dispel that rumor because I kind of like that rumor. It was actually not as heavy as it normally would be. I don't know how they did it. It looked absolutely real to me, but it was slightly lighter than it would be if that was a real log. So it still had some weight that I could use, but the most difficult thing was that it was behind my neck and shoulders and trying to do this and climb up the stairs. And the day that we shot that, it was very cold, meaning in the Pacific Northwest, the sun can be shining, but it could be in the 30s and 20s and 30s because everybody in the cast and crew were wearing parkas and gloves, stocking hats. And in order for it to look like I was sweating, they actually had to spray glycerin on my face because it was that cold out there.
Wow.
And that was shot in Joel B. Stadium, by the way.
Wow. So a different kind of question. So before each of Shute's meets, the Hoover Panthers band would play an incredible music score that kind of sounded like the Jaws music theme song.
Yeah.
So who came up with that music? And whenever you, like nowadays, do you ever play that music whenever you walk into like a bar or something?
Okay, so the soundtrack for the movie is fantastic. So most of the time I hear Lunatic Fringe. That one will be, that will be the main one that you hear pumping people up. Because I think that was the one he was jump roping, doing the jump rope to right before the match. Yeah. I think they played it at the beginning of the movie as well.
Also
anyway,
young.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's played twice during that film. Anyway, and it's interesting. I don't know if you could see it, but there were like little sharks that they had out of styrofoam in the crowd that said "shoot" across it because it's dun, 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 dun. But I've never heard that music played again. I thought it was incredible. I just because it is.
I played it like 6 times. It was so cool.
Yeah, I think it's perfect for the character. Like he's a shark, man. He's gonna tear you apart, basically.
I mean, heck, if you want really good walk-in music, we'll have Zack just announcing you for Frank with that music coming on. I mean, walk into any room, you'll just dominate the atmosphere.
Yeah. I remember Randy Couture was telling me that he used to come out to his last, MMA fight to Lunatic Fringe from the movie.
Based on that, yeah. He got it from Vision Quest.
That's where he got it. He was a big fan. Actually, we did a fundraiser in Los Angeles 2 years ago before COVID hit, and we had this log created by this guy named Corey Scott who makes these training logs that are phenomenal. And we put it up for auction, and then I carried it into the event. And I was wearing the little short blue shorts and the tube socks and the yellow top, and brought it in, and he ended up bidding on it and getting it, and so all that money was donated to the wrestling community. So that was pretty cool.
So you as a wrestler, though, a bodybuilder, someone with experience in wrestling, and a lot more in fitness in general, in comparison to the protagonist of the movie, Matthew Modine, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yep.
He, who is primarily an actor, and as he mentioned, was trying to bulk up in specific, did that play a specific impediment to your choreography that was going on, especially for that final match?
Well, as as a wrestler, most of the time you're going to come in there as a freshman and you're just going to get beat up for the first year. You don't really know what you're doing. You don't have your technique and your counters. And then, you need to have at least 3 attacks and 3 counters and 3 counters to the counters. And you don't have that in the beginning. And you're still trying to find, your movement and your timing. And this is all new, He actually learned a great deal in the time that I think he trained for maybe 6 months at the most. And for somebody that had only been wrestling for 6 months, I thought he did a really good job. And part of my job was also to make him look good. So if you really watch close, you'll see at certain points where I'm trying to push him up onto his feet. So I know you're going to look at that. You're going to go back and look, or that'd be
100%.
So look for right before he does the final move where he swings over the top. Now that's a move that we never want to see wrestlers do, is swing your arms over the top, because that's a blast double waiting to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so he did an amazing job. And when he was asked by the director, at that point where I do the body slam on him, would you like somebody to come in and fill in for you for that body slam? And Matthew goes, no, I got this. And so when I threw him, Brick Thiefalt, the guy that told me about this role in the first place, goes, make sure he feels it, Frank, because I want the actor to know what it's like to be thrown as a wrestler. You know how wrestlers can be a little sadistic at times. Yeah. So we shot that scene. I picked him up and I threw him just flat on his back. And then he rolled over. They called cut, and then he took a while because it knocked the wind out of him. But we got it in one take, and it turned out really good. So got to give him, chops for hanging in there. Pardon me?
Is that when you got the penalty?
That's when they go, that's illegal. You can't slam somebody. You're supposed to go down with them, and so you just throw them.
Yeah.
So what was it like to work with famous celebrities such as Forrest Whitaker, Ronnie Cox, Matthew Modern, and like Madonna? Have you kept in touch with any of them?
So I was only on set when I was doing my own work. I didn't show up there, to get in the way of anybody. And so I just showed up. I was just there to do a job, take care of my business. I spoke with Forrest a little bit and Gary Casper, who played Otto. And I didn't really have any scenes with Raphael Savage or even Ronnie Cox necessarily. So I never really spoke to those guys. And I think there was some part of this was divine intervention where the producer, or the director, kind of wanted me to be separated anyway, not to get too friendly with the other actors. And so I didn't really hang out with him. I didn't really speak much to him, but I've run into Forrest Whitaker like one time on the 3rd Street Promenade and said hi. I've kept in touch with Gary Casper, and Matthew and I have run into each other a few times. And so last time was about 6-7 years ago at the Beat the Streets event in New York City.
Cool.
And that was the first time in 30 years that we kind of had seen each other, and we got to sit on the edge of the wrestling match and watch the United States national team wrestle the Russia's national wrestling team. That was back when Varner was wrestling. I don't know if you know who Varner is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that guy's a beast.
Insane.
After that, I'm in, they did some events afterwards after they finished wrestling. And I was walking up the steps and he was walking down the steps. And I said, "Hey, how you doing?" I slapped him on the shoulder and I was like, I hitting a brick wall. And I was like, holy crap. If Shute became a college wrestler, that's what he would look like. That's my thinking. Oh my God. That's what he was.
So do you have any future plans to return to acting? Have any wrestling movies reached out to you perhaps, since you've sort of said, I need my time, I need my break?
Yeah, it's so interesting because the shift that I'm in right now, I'm actually looking, I've been offered a few different roles to do some cameos, and one's a wrestling movie and another one's just a regular movie that's out there. So that's kind of where I'm trending to. I really miss the acting part. I feel like I've really done a lot of, I put in a lot of time and worked with a lot of different people. And I enjoyed that work. I would like to do some acting at this point. And I'm working on a project right now and it's in development. And if it comes to fruition, you'll see me on the big screen again.
That's fantastic. And now with the more financial stability, hopefully going into it, you'll be able to not have to work the nights and the days. It will hopefully make it a little easier.
The goal is really take better care of myself on all levels. Yes. Yeah,
it's so key.
So what were some of your favorite parts about the movie and the character you played?
Well, I think that the best part of this thing was when we did the final scene and they brought in over 1,500 extras. And so it felt like an actual wrestling match,
wow.
And for just that wrestling match, it took us an entire week. We filmed for almost 16 to 18 hours, 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then 8 hours Thursday and Friday. So it was a lot of work. But I really felt good about how it ended up. It looks fairly realistic. I felt like there was some great moves that we got. Now that it's like,
super real.
Yeah, and now it's the dynamics and the evolution of wrestling is really amazing. And to me, where people are like diving at their ankles and sitting on the corners, and it's like we never thought of that back then. It's kind of evolved to this really like,
right. It was more just throwing back then. Now it's like a lot more like doing like leg takedowns.
It's really cool to watch these guys come up with these moves now, and how just when you think that they're in trouble, they're diving at an ankle and they get out of trouble.
They make use of those joints and those angles really well.
Yeah.
When we talk about funk style, it was just not around, and so now it's just, you got to be able to like do funk, baby. You got to be able to like flip and grab and spin and do a backflip out of a single leg to get out of that. there's a lot of really upgraded new moves that are really just interesting and fun to watch now.
Yeah. So you started recently a website, Shoot Shirts. What kind of led you to name the program off of your character's name as opposed to your own?
Well, I just think that the character is so identified in the wrestling community. And maybe not everybody, knows that I played Shute. So, but they do know Shute. If anybody has seen Vision Quest, it's a great one. It's like Madonna or Cher. It kind of brings its own connotation to it. And so that's why we went with that. And it's an act of love and one level. I just love that it's the character is still beloved, and people are still watching Vision Quest. And just like I had a podcast with this group, this coach back east in Pennsylvania, and they just showed Vision Quest to his grade schoolers, wrestlers. And I was like, wow, that's a little intense for those kids. But he was like, no, they loved it. And so then I did a little, FaceTime with them and checked in with them. And so this is like the fourth generation that is being, shown to. This is 36 years ago. So this thing is still,
four generations of people you're inspiring.
Yeah. And that's it. The best thing you can do is have a positive, information out there, and that it uplifts people and makes people to be a better version of themselves. Like, oh, I saw that and I started carrying cement, 50-pound bags up the stadium stairs, which then got me to be a state champion. And that's why I became a state champion. I was like, fantastic. That's what I want to hear, that it's made a positive impact on somebody to make them a better person, a better wrestler on and off the mat.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And speaking of such an impactful movie, in 2009, I read that Taylor Lautner from Twilight expressed interest in making a remake of the movie. Whatever happened to that? Do you think there ever will be a remake? Do you think there should be a remake?
It didn't go through. It didn't happen. I think there were some things going on in Hollywood, and I think that his career didn't quite peak where he wanted it to, and so they weren't going to invest in him. I know a producer that actually was pushing a Vision Quest 2 around that time as well. Wow. And so it didn't get picked up. And then there was, I think, a writer's strike, and there was some other stuff that went on. It's a challenge. It's really a challenge to do this kind of a movie, and for people to invest $30-40 million in a full-length motion picture. So that's questionable whether that'll ever be redone. So, yeah. I mean, I would love to see who they would cast in this, and what role would he have played? Would he have played the Shute character or Matthew Modine's character? I wasn't clear. I'm guessing he was going to play Matthew Modine's character, although he has a very physical build already. It was very Shute-esque.
So I know that Vision Quest was produced by Warner Bros., yeah, which is now owned by AT&T, and now they have HBO Max. Are there any talks of Vision Quest being put on HBO Max?
Are you talking about the movie, the original movie?
Yeah.
That I have no idea. I have no idea if they're going to bring that out. That would be really cool. I'd love for them to do that. I think that it's available like on Hulu, and if you're going to purchase it, I always tell people buy the Blu-ray, because it just clarifies it. The DVD still looks a little grainy some places, and the music's not as good. So get a Blu-ray if you're going to do that, and you're just going to buy it, which you can for I think it's like $17 maybe that's the last time I bought one, several years ago. But you can buy it on Amazon, and the clarity is phenomenal, the music's phenomenal, and so it's really worth that upgrade.
So us being two wrestlers who grew up with this, who have been inspired, what does it mean to you to be that inspiration for people like us, for all these generations of wrestlers?
daunting, and it's like it's forced me to stay in somewhat decent shape. Because the last thing you want to see is a fat Shute showing up to an appearance. So I've had to maintain a certain level of training and working out, which I don't mind. It's really good for me to be active. And I listen, I just I love going to events. This has been the longest period I haven't gone to events because of COVID. I'm scheduled to head out to New Jersey on December the 12th. There's an event there. We're going to show Vision Quest, and then afterwards we're doing a Q&A and a meet and greet. So if you're interested, reach out to Michael Gray in New Jersey and just check him out on Facebook. He's got his thing up there, so you can, need to reserve your seats. And
whether you've seen it or not, I'd highly recommend going.
Yeah.
It sounds fantastic.
I'm sure watching and hearing that soundtrack live with the fans would be awesome, an awesome experience.
So again, I love meeting wrestling families. I feel like everywhere I go, they accept me into their life as if I'm a family member, and they treat me really well. I was at Arizona, in a place called Window Rock, Arizona, for a big tournament. I was there for 3 days. And it just was every time somebody come up and would say like, hey, I'm so inspired by this. It just made me feel better about everything that I did, everything that I went through to do the role. And I just can't imagine, it's just an honor, to be a part of that and to do what I did, and that it's still being received in a positive way. So I, loved everything about it. Loved going to these events and meeting the kids and talking to the parents and talking about nutrition.
Wow. So I think that about wraps up all the time. The Zoom's going to be ending any second.
Okay.
Thank you so much for giving us your time. This was, all I can say is you're the man. Thank you so much for coming here.
This was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Frank.
Hey, really nice to meet both you guys. This is why wrestling continues on with people like you that are, keep it rolling, that are inspired by it, that inspire others by, doing things like this. So kudos to you guys. Thanks for having me on. Maybe more for the future, man. Let's keep in touch.
Sounds great.
Thank you.